Welcome back. You're watching Morning Express on KTN News, and with me, Joy Doreen Bira. Now, there's a lot that's making headlines, despite the fact that we are seeing the bigger headline being about capping interest rates from the Jude Njomo-sponsored bill, that is the Banking Amendment Bill of 2015. But that aside, there's also the IEBC reforms, and in studio to help us understand these reforms and also tell us about that IEBC report that just didn't see the close of day yesterday. We have Senator for Makueni, who is Mutula Kilonzo Jr. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
And in studio as well, we also have, this is a very difficult one, but I hope I'm going to pronounce it, Member of Parliament for Chuka Igamba Ngombe, that is Mudhomi Njuki. Thank you so much for joining us as well.
Good morning.
And well, there's quite a lot we don't seem to understand. Members of Parliament are making a big deal out of this one, that is in regard to the IEBC report. And Senator Mutula Kilonzo Jr. has a huge volume report here. And I think we now seek to understand why exactly there is some sort of friction on why we are not agreeing in the different factions. But I will start with you, Honourable. Members of Parliament don't seem to be in agreement with the IEBC report. Why?
Well, first of all, thanks for hosting me with one of the members of the committee that did this report. Apparently, they think they bit more than they could chew, because they were asked to bring the main dish, but I think they also brought the accompaniment that is bringing problems, because really the IEBC reforms did not have to include things that have to curb the freedom of people in their parties, as per se.
Like party hopping.
Like party hopping. And secondly, if this report was not meant to be changed a comma or a full stop, then there's no need of bringing it to the House. Because basically the House cannot be a rubber stamp or a conveyor's belt where you just place a report and it gets to the other side. These are people who have responsibility that are mandated by the people through the Constitution to legislate. And that means scrutinize and tell us anything that is not good for us as a country. And basically that is what is happening. So the issue that are pertinent, the elephant in the room, the party hopping, is something that does not resonate well with the members of Parliament.
All right.
Because most of them may have come in through nominations, but the others who came in because they were rejected by the nomination. Because the credibility of this nomination process also could be an issue, because it's basically about the party. It's the party that makes the decision on this, and the party is not bound by any constitution that is universal. It's about the party constitution, which has nothing to do with the country.
All right, that is the Honourable's perspective. But now let me bring in Senator. Senator, you're among the committee that put all of this together.
Yes.
For the ordinary Kenyan who probably doesn't understand what the reforms are about, what the report, what is entailed in the report, maybe you want to break it down for us so we can be able to understand exactly what it is.
Thank you for hosting me, and I don't know why my colleague thinks that we bit more than we can chew, because the motion, now with benefit of hindsight, I don't think that my colleagues understood what the motion was about, because the motion was very specific. But everybody went home thinking that the only agenda we had on the table was to deal with IEBC. There was electoral matters, other electoral matters. What is it that will make our elections much better? What is it that will make sure that when we go into the August 2017 elections, we don't have all the problems that we have? And the players that came in and the people who presented memorandum said so many things. You have a portion of the people who deal with disputes. The court, through the Supreme Court, the High Court, told us, please change the law on presidential petitions so that we have an easier time in determining petitions. The Gender Commission spoke about allocation of seats. Other parties spoke about nominations, that is the issue that is bringing, that is the elephant in the room. But let me explain to Kenyans in a simple way what it means. Nobody has banned party hopping. We have 62 political parties. So the liberty is still there. What will make the nominations easier is that most people have said, and particularly from the experience of the last general elections, and I participated in the disputes on nominations in the last general election. So we have moved the days as proposed by the court from 45 days to 60 days. That's nomination. So all political parties will have to do nominations 60 days before elections. Simple. Now, but there is a caveat. The caveat is that 21 days before those nominations, the parties will have to submit the names of the people who are going to contest on those parties.
Right.
And the IEBC will be required within those 21 days to publish those names. What that means is that if I am in Wiper and my good friend, I don't know which party he belongs to now after they merged. Which party are you in?
I'm in Jubilee.
He could hop
And
out.
Jubilee
We are
party.
merging on that.
So the Jubilee party will be required to submit the list of names together with the date.
Yeah.
And it will be gazetted. So what that simply means is that once his name is gazetted under Jubilee party, and I am gazetted and his contestant is also gazetted under another political party, you then have no room at that material time to leave, because names are already gazetted.
Yeah.
But before the 21 days to the nominations, any member, any person who wants to contest has liberty to cross into another political party. What you want to reduce is the problems that we have. Now, Jubilee Party, particularly, has requested, and we have now amended the law so that IEBC can then can be allowed to do the nominations of those political parties. What they don't realize, and I've said this before, is that we have not managed to amend the constitution because IEBC will be the one to sit again and determine the disputes. So what we have introduced is what we call political hygiene in nominations, because it has been submitted, and I can confirm, in many of the areas, if it's from Ukambani, if it's from Nyanza, if it's from Rift Valley, the nominations are a mini general election. And the political parties disputes tribunal, IEBC, are saying, in fact, this time around, you have 1450 MCAs candidates who vie. They're saying the disputes will be much more, because people have all of a sudden discovered that there's value in having these positions. So the political hygiene is to ensure that we do not delay the date of the election.
All right. So we have seen chaotic primaries in the past, and I don't know if these reforms are seeking to curb this chaos.
There is a particular person from Mwala constituency in the last general election who contested the primaries all the way to almost the date of the election, to the extent that in fact his application to the High Court was then overtaken by events by virtue of the fact that ballot papers had already been printed. So if we as Kenyans want to have elections on 8th of August 2017, and from what I can see, both in terms of the elective seats, the competition is going to be so high, the stakes are going to be so high, that if you do not manage the nominations, there's a huge risk of actually causing chaos in the elections. In terms of between a certain time, the ballot papers must be printed.
Right.
And if they're printed, they must be shipped. If we print them ourselves, the same. So if you have a list and you have not finished the disputes, then you will not have a general election.
All right. There have been questions as to why politicians are not paying their party fees, both on a monthly and annual basis. But that is a question I'm going to be posing to Honorable. But then we have 348 days to the next election, if we are going to go by the date of 8th of August 2017. And we also are meant to have new IEBC commissioners in place before the election. The IEBC must have the polls equipment by December of this year. I don't know if that is going to happen, but hopefully it's going to. Elections are to be conducted electronically, and only only voting and counting to be done manually. The rest of it is going to be electronic. So those are some of the key issues that you probably need to be aware of as well, among other so many important issues right there. But then we sought to find out from Kenyans if they really understand what these IEBC reforms are all about, and if they think they are for the greater good. Let's take a listen.
It's done the way we have seen. The selection is done fairly. Then we believe that the IEBC, the reforms that the parliament has debated on, we believe the new team will at least learn from the past and pass and give us, supervise the credible election in these coming elections.
The reforms that we have, I think, are good for the country, especially that one of MPs hopping, or maybe politicians hopping from one party to another. I think they'll have to guard this country from the evils that have been going on. And I think also we are yet to see the commissioners, but I think it's also good. All the reforms that have taken place are nice, but we are yet to know who the commissioners are, so that we see our country forge forward.
Through the whole process of kicking out the all IEBC team headed by Isaac Hassan, and a new team that will be legitimized by a group led by the clerics, as well as civil society and other stakeholders. We hope, is the prayer of Kenyans, millions of Kenyans, that really we should never ever go back to a position where brother turns against brother or sister turns against sister, like we had in the unfortunate events of 2007, 2008. So it is my hope, my prayer that the new electoral team that should be in place soon will be one that is credible and restore the dignity of the elective politics in this country.
All right, you can join in the conversation as well, and well, it also, among other issues in the IEBC reforms and the report, they're saying 60 days to the elections. You know, there's not going to be any sort of party hopping, and I think that's the biggest worry for members of parliament. And Honorable can help me understand. Do you think, as a member of parliament, if say you do not go through the nominations, you want to change parties?
First and foremost, I want to say I may not speak for myself at the moment. I was a victim, but I don't want to use this as a platform to put across that argument.
Yeah.
Because today I came in through the Alliance Party of Kenya.
Bus.
The bus.
The bus, yeah.
Yes, the bus.
Yet I was the favorite in my constituency. But because the TNA was in the hands of people who felt that they can be able to control the politics of the party. And I remember the word that were used were chama iko na mwenyewe. You know, I fought in there, and I was lucky, of course, the previous parliament and passed the clause of party hopping to be allowed. That is how I managed to move to APK, and eventually I clinched that seat of the member of parliament with 3/4. I mean, actually it's over 80% of the votes.
Yeah.
And you can see, basically, if there was no party hopping, the people of Chuka Magombe today would have been having a candidate not of their choice, but the party's choice in parliament today. And that is what we're trying to talk about here. This could be very good for people who own the parties, because basically you want to have everybody in your party. But for the mwananchi and the contestants, it's an elephant in there.
Yeah, but you know,
It's a
let
problem.
me say this.
And let me finish before you go to that, Senator. I do appreciate that, yes, you talk about 60 days before nominations, and then you have to give in
60 days before election.
Before elections.
Is when you do your nomination.
And nominations. And 21 days before you do the nominations, you have to give in the list. That is 81 days.
Yes, and the names are published.
Yes. So it basically means 81 days to elections. You cannot switch parties. And you know what happens when you go to Nyanza? and you're told if you've not been singing the song of Baba or John Badi or somebody else, or in my case, you have to walk a different path.
Yeah, true.
Then you realize it's too late. And you know, politics is sometimes about deceit. They don't tell you the truth. Mutula, you know, you just came to politics the other day, you were in law firm.
But he does understand what this is all about.
Talking to you today and you're in the same room with them.
That's what
they
I'm
could be in another room in another few hours with somebody else different. So we need to have that freedom to be able to have people have their choice.
You know what this is about is this.
Yeah.
That it's not the sort of open-ended, because if we have now provided that IEBC will conduct nominations, because even the political parties don't trust themselves to conduct nominations. I also don't trust them. That you will have an independent body conducting your nominations. The fact is that what we have a problem with, and I'm talking about the political class, is that people are wondering why they are being given 81 days to make a decision. They want to make a decision on the 7 days. Yeah, they want it open-ended so that you can make a decision when it's already too late. But if you truly want to have a general election, I've had comments about infringing political rights, etc., etc. I started with the premise that first you have 62 political parties registered.
Yeah.
I've just read in the newspaper that the registrar refused to register the 63rd or 64th yesterday. Now you have the provision for being an independent candidate. Trust me, 81 days to the next general election, I would have made a choice personally. If this gentleman, and is a good friend of mine, and I met him before I became a politician, is that popular, he has two options. One, the option to become an independent candidate and be elected like one of my colleagues in Kibwezi.
Yes.
Who was elected in a wiper zone, but he is an independent candidate. Or choose another political party. The fact is that members of parliament must, all of us, must introduce mechanisms that will ensure that we don't complain too much at the end, that we regulate the processes so that we can have a general election in August, because all of us have insisted we want to have a general election in August. So I understand, particularly from the major political parties, that have suspicion that somebody else is playing games. They have that issue. This is a suspicion of the major political parties. All
right, but is there ever time enough for say, politicians to decide on what parties they actually want to vie?
It's possible, by the way, Doreen, it's possible, like in the last general elections, that our politicians were keeping 3 tickets, 3 certificates. One for this party, one for this party, another one for another party.
I am happy that he has admitted that it is possible to have a certificate before nomination.
It's a fact, isn't it? It has happened.
So in the same nomination you're talking about, how do you have a certificate before nomination? It means it's already predetermined.
People have done
and I want to ask my friend Senator for Makueni, what would be the issue with allowing party hopping 60 days to elections? Because in this particular case, we seem to be wanting to cure a different problem when you say 21 days you're locked, because you want to lock the guys before nominations. So that they base it on what they perceive as fairness that is going to be for nominations.
Is that so, Senator?
Why don't you let them go through the nominations?
Let me explain something.
And then after nominations now, they can decide was I treated fairly or not.
You want the 80 days to come after the nomination.
Listen,
is that what you're trying to say?
The 60 days should be after the nomination.
Let me explain something.
That would really
let me explain something that we have not managed to deal with.
Yeah.
And it's in the law. The law requires that for you to contest in a political party, you must have been a member 90 days before.
Yeah.
Correct? Now you have just given 60 days to nomination. Now, at what point will you comply with both? Means you are a member of political party Y, which you want to jump into 60 days before nominations, or even let's use these 81 days.
81 days
before nomination.
So even 9 days short.
So what has happened is that, in fact, in my own political party, there's a member who is being challenged because he holds a ticket from my political party. Yet the record shows he was a member of another political party. So that is the problem in our political parties. And the registrar of political parties was at the committee, and she said the problem is I have not been given enough room to manage this process.
So does that explain why the party fees have not been paid? You know,
Yes.
between 5,000 and 50,000. And the other day we were speaking to Senator Hassan Omar, and he was saying that up to 25 billion shillings has not, rather million shillings has not been paid to the Wiper party.
It's a fact.
Yeah?
Yeah.
So are we seeing the same thing, you know, repeating itself
So-
even as we head towards the 2017
But
election?
there's even another clause that we have not even discussed.
Yeah.
That there must be a register of names. So you must be in a register of a political party submitted in advance to the register of political parties.
That's
Okay.
right.
Honorable.
From the talk on the corridors, we have almost 1 year to elections.
Yeah, yeah.
We still have amendments on the election laws.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
The National Assembly.
Yeah.
So once we have done away with the comma and the full stop with the issue of party
the
hopping,
hopping, yes.
then we can go back and deal with the process. You know, on how we can tackle the other issues.
No, but
as
you
for
know,
now,
Mheshimiwa, what would you like to see?
As for now,
After 60
Senator,
days, you would like to hop? Before election.
That's neither here.
He
nor there.
wants
I told
the
you I
60
don't
days
talk.
or even
Right
81
now,
days
I told
to come
you,
after
no, no,
nominations.
but
I am here
understand
to
you.
share an opinion that is held by most members of parliament, so
Yeah,
that you
but
can be
I
able
want-
to understand.
So,
It may
can
not
we
be
reduce the
about
time
me. It
to
may not be
45
about me, because this time I'm focused
I
that
think
I'm
you should
going to
increase
be
it to
in
100
Jubilee.
days.
What? No, but Doreen,
time.
let me tell you, there's yet another process. After this gentleman wins or loses, but let me just start with winning, because he will. When you win,
Yes.
the person who has lost has a right to go and challenge that primary. And after that primary is that dispute is resolved by IEBC.
Is there a
at-
specific period of time
Yes,
to do that?
After 7 days, there is still yet another process of going to the High Court.
Right.
So once you finish with IEBC on the party primaries, when somebody challenges you, they still can go to the High Court. And in some cases, like in last year, some nominations were nullified. So I personally want to know, in terms of the period, forget about the party hopping, because there are arguments about political rights and all those things. But how do you then put this process in such a way that you have all disputes determined by the High Court, IEBC, after the 60 days? That is what we need to deal
In
with.
one way.
All right,
And actually,
so-
it just said something that really contradicts the whole idea of not allowing party hopping. Because which is the lesser evil? Allowing people who are not...
Disenfranchised.
Yeah, you feel that you've not been treated fairly. You jump to another party fairly. You don't have to cost people money.
And do you do nominations?
But the
Or
thing
you
is,
jump?
because what we saw in the previous election is
Yeah.
that people kept jumping ship from one to the other to the other to the other, and by the time we got to the elections,
Yeah.
there's some who had hopped about three
Three
times.
times.
There's
Yeah.
something that Junior has just introduced, which was not actually in my mind. That the 7 days for dispute resolution.
IEBC.
IBC.
Yes, first.
What about the party when after nominations? Where if you're not satisfied, you can still
you can
go
still-
for
to
dispute
the-
resolution.
Yes, that's what
now
I've
that
said.
can go the way
To
up
the
to
High
even
Court.
to the High Court,
And therefore-
which is less expensive and less criminal.
Party hopping.
Party hopping is the option. You just go to another
It's
party.
the easier
you
way
don't have
out.
to have a case in court. You don't have to take your people through crazy situations.
But let's wind this down. At the end of it all, do you think this bit is going to be amended? Do you think members of parliament
They've
are going
already
to
amended.
push
It's
for
already
it?
amended,
It's already
actually.
amended.
What they
It's
have
already
done,
amended.
what they
Yeah.
have done, Doreen, and it's baffling, and that is why they had to defer the proceedings yesterday. I don't know whether it was a Babu and a Mwamba,
Yeah.
but they deleted. I don't know whether they deleted or cancelled paragraph 659(7) that
Yes.
says that after the names of the candidates are forwarded to the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission, a candidate who changes their party shall not be eligible to contest in an election as a candidate of the new party or as an independent candidate. So that is the clause that they have removed.
Yes,
A candidate who changes their party. That was very smart. That
Sorry?
was very smart for
Yeah,
the members
that's
of
the amendment
parliament.
of allowable, what we already
That is the
passed.
amendment of
And
the
what we
report.
should be
Yeah.
looking at now is how this report can be passed, because it can be rejected in a whole.
I know.
And you should be thinking about what will be the consequences of having this report rejected as a whole. Would we have to go back to the streets again? Because
we have no commission.
when you went
no,
to
I
the back
don't
to the
think so.
street, when you went in the street, it was not for the party hopping. It was for something totally different, electoral reforms that included the IBC commissioners.
Allocation of seats, gender parity.
Definitely, those are the main
Dispute
issues. That is
resolution.
what I told you. That is a side.
Voter
That is a
processing.
side dish. Yeah, it's a saucer. which is actually bringing problem in the dish.
By the way, it's not a side dish. It's a fork. This is the fork.
But have you thought,
That feeds the
about the voter in all of this, or it's just about, you know, selfish gain from the politicians? They're just looking out for their interests. Have you thought about how this could delay the process to the next general election as you think about all of these amendments?
It's only one.
Definitely, that is my biggest concern. That this process, this report has to pass. And that is why we have to be sober. We have to renegotiate. And of course, that is why it was by using standing order number 1, it was put into hold so that we can think about it and debate soberly today when we have had a night to rest. And we are hoping that we will come to at least some sort of agreement so that we can dispense of it. But I like what the Senate did. Well, you passed it the way it is. Sending a message sending a message.
There were heated protests.
Yeah, there were protests. I mean, my own colleague, Senator Omar, says that, strictly speaking, this clause presupposes that parties have ideologies. That you are stuck to a political party because you like the way it looks and what it. But it says political parties are tribal, whatever. They have no basis. They have no interest. There's nothing you need to hold on to, and therefore you should be allowed. And Senator Omar was very clear that he said when he suspected that his original political party was not going to be fair, he is now a senator because he was allowed to hope. And I have said that 21 days before nominations, those decisions could have been made. I don't know whether it's the timelines that we need to change. I don't know whether they are unhappy about the gazettement, but we have done the law in such a way that and if you look at the law, the clause that is referred to in the report is not in the elections bill. It's not there. We're not saying you should not party hope. We have just put strict time deadlines. There is no clause in the election amendment law that says you cannot hope. What the law says is that you have a strict timeline.
Under which to hope. So the National Assembly...
Those are semantics, because what this report is passed, it will be signed into law, and it's done.
Honorable, so the National Assembly will take its vote today.
We will.
Are you in or out?
Well, I want to say that I speak for myself and I speak for the people. The two people that I speak for. Because definitely in this country, it come a time when we must have two political major parties.
True.
They can actually be able to carry out the affairs of politics in this country. Maybe one third force. That sort of maturity is necessary. And of course, I stand with my president that we need to have on our coalition side, everybody in the
coalition.
All right.
However, the issue of ensuring that we do not sabotage this report is what is very pertinent for me, because when you read the mood of the House, for many reasons, most people are for that party hopping. So the idea when we go to the decision today is to think of how it will be possible to amend this without having to offend what the committee really wanted to have, and what we can be able to
just
have. Halfway.
Deadlines.
All right,
so we can actually be able to sort it out. So my voting today will depend on what will be best after negotiation in the House, on what is good for my people, and of course for our party.
All right. Finally, if my director can give me a minute or two so we can wrap this up with the capping of interest rates. So the Jude Njomo sponsored bill was signed into law by the president yesterday, and this changes everything for banking institutions. Lending rates, maximum interest rates that banks can now charge are at 14.5%. The current central bank rate that is currently at 10.5% is actually the benchmark for all of this, and until it's reviewed, which I'm thinking it's going to take quite some time, because by the time they revised it down by 100 basis points, it had taken quite some time at 11.5%. So in 2015, banks collectively made 134 billion shillings in profits, and some people think this is just extorting Kenyans through interest, but the interest on deposits now has to go up to 7.35% from about 4%, and bank interest rates as well have been at an average of 18%, which the central bank has many times said was on the higher side, even if the central bank governor was against capping of interest rates. So as people who agreed to this, as legislators who agreed to this, do you think this is going to be good for the economy? Honorable?
First and foremost, I want to say that this is one of the biggest milestones that Uhuru Kenyatta, the president, has ever achieved for this country in his 5 years of reign. Because we've had a scenario where you've been robbing the poor to give the rich. Because the poor are the people who normally keep their little money in the bank for savings. They always tell you, I have my savings. And they are paid very poor rate. And the rich are always there picking the money at whatever interest rate to go and do business and come back and employ these poor again. At the moment, having touched both sides, the interest rate on the savings, lowering the interest rates on the borrowings, we've definitely taken care of the mwananchi, who will now move from the Shylocks and personal borrowing to formal banking. For you to be able to borrow from the bank, it means now we have to see your money coming to the bank. Those people who have been keeping their money under the pillow will now take their money to the bank because they want to borrow. And what will happen? We are going to improve our data collection on the economic status of our people. Because even collecting tax has been a problem, because if somebody has informal operations of his business, how do you get to know how much they make and how much they earn? How do you tax them? But now it will be possible to know, even the mama mboga, this is how much she's worth, and we can actually be able to give her more money from Uwezo and those other things based on their operation.
In short,
so definitely
it's for the greater good.
It's going to be a very good thing for this
from the
country,
legal perspective,
the
can this be reversed? Because the Kenya Bankers Association think it's going to lock out the small borrowers in a sense that now banks are going to be more critical on who exactly they lend their money to because of the risk on return.
That is an empty threat.
On payment, but can it be reversed?
It's legal nonsense, let me tell you. Because this is, let's just be basic. Banks ask you and I and him to deposit money in their institutions. Okay? And then they give you this much on deposit. But then when you borrow, they give you this much on interest. I mean, it's ridiculous, you understand? Now, when people are, and I call them usurious profits, you know, you're making profits in a market where nobody is benefiting. This thing about interest rates, I've said this before, that when you take a mortgage for 15 years, and you know value of property, the value of property doesn't go down, it goes up. So in 15 years, the value of your security in a bank has increased, but you're paying much more than you. In fact, there's somebody I know who so far, after borrowing 5 years ago, the only thing they've paid is interest.
Wow.
And they don't
The only thing they've paid is interest. Let me tell you, this country must congratulate the president for not listening to his governors, for not listening to the cartels.
Considering his financial background as well.
Considering his financial back, considering the fact that his family has got interest in the banking sector, that he has gone against all those things. To be, and you know, the power that we have given him under the law and the constitution to sign on the dotted line into law, he has exercised it with his left hand properly, so that then we can take care of the economy. And let me tell you the benefit.
Right, briefly.
The benefit is that you want a credit economy where people can borrow more. Money can go into banks, not into phones and mattresses, so that people can then borrow and grow the economy. Otherwise, you have dead capital everywhere, and the only person who is making money is banks. I can't imagine that people stand up in a podium and say our half year profit is 10 billion shillings.
There was
out of Mama Mboga's money.
Mama Mboga's money.
All right. I won't mention the bank though.
I didn't say anything.
Thank you for joining us, Honorable Mudhomi Njuki, Member of Parliament for Chuka Igamba Ng'ombe, and Mutula Kilonzo Jr., Senator for Makueni. Thank you both so much for joining us in this edition of State of the Nation. You're watching Morning Express. Coming up, we give you updates on what's making headlines around the country and beyond.